Next matchup, little Sunday action. I'm talking about the Vikings at the Commanders, 1 o'clock Sunday. Minnesota's minus 3.5 on the road, totals 44. But for a team laying 3.5 points on the road, the Vikes have really struggled on defense. These guys are actually in the bottom 5 in the league in defending the pass. When it comes to covering the point spread, they failed to cover against the likes of Chicago, New Orleans, and Detroit. They're facing a Washington team who won their last 3 straight, and they covered in all 3 of those victories. Cole Holcomb and Jamin Davis, they have over 100 tackles between the two of them. When it comes to the weather report, well, it's going to be an unseasonably warm day in the nation's capital. Mostly sunny and 78 by kickoff. And when it comes to the injury report for Washington, Jackson, Brown, Dotson, and Turner are questionable. Meanwhile, for Minnesota, Bullard, Tomlinson, and Smith, they're listed as questionable for them. When it comes to the total in this one, Minnesota went 4-1 to the over in their last 5. Meanwhile, the Commanders saw overs against the likes of Green Bay, Detroit, and Jacksonville. I'm going to lean toward Washington plus 3.5, keeping this one close, over 44. Next ball game I have for you, it is going to be Colts at the Patriots, 1 o'clock in Foxborough. New England is minus 5 in front of their home fans, totals 39. And even though the Pats are favored, it's been Indy who's playing incredibly tough defense. They're allowing only 19 points a game, and they're in the top 10 in pass defense. Zaire Franklin, he has a team-best 81 tackles. Meanwhile, DeForest Buckner and Yannick Ngakoue, well, they've combined for 8 sacks. Now they're facing a Patriots team on the other side of things who's been little threat throwing the football this year. They actually rank in the bottom 10 in passing offense. Meanwhile, defensively on the other side of the football, normally good there, but the Pats have had some difficulty slowing down the run. Now, injury-wise, Parker, Andrews, Duggar, and Barmore, they're listed as questionable for New England. Meanwhile, for Indy, Stewart and Pay are questionable for them. Now, when it comes to this weather, mostly sunny and warm by kickoff, although we could see 13-mile-an-hour winds, so keep an eye on the wind, especially if you have maybe some receivers or, I'm assuming you're not going to have a quarterback, but maybe even a kicker, if you're a fantasy player. But anyway, when it comes to the number, the Pats saw unders against the likes of the Jets, Lions, and Steelers. Meanwhile, the Colts saw all of their games this year stay under the total, except for one. I'm going to lean toward the Colts plus 5, under 39. Next matchup, Dolphins, Bears, 1 o'clock East. Miami's minus 4 on the road, totals 43. And even though the Bears statistically have the better defense right now, well, they now shipped off both of their best defensive players in the past 2 weeks. I mean, these are like really good players, like all-decade type players in Quinn and Smith. So it looks like the Bears are doing the equivalent of tanking like they do in the NBA. And I'll tell you what, Chicago certainly could have used those guys on defense because Miami's throwing for a whole bunch of yards. I mean, you really need to get a good pass rush on the Dolphins because they are airing it out. And, of course, they're in the top 3 in passing as Tyreek Hill's averaging 120 yards a game. And if you think the Bears are going to run all over the Fins with their legs, well, just keep in mind that stopping the run game is actually one of the few things this Miami defense does well. The Fins are actually in the top 10 in the league in fewest rush yards allowed. Now, they're facing a Chicago offense who scores just 19 points a game, and they've been no threat throwing the football. They're actually dead last in the league in passing yards. Now, weather-wise, 64 and breezy in the Windy City should be pretty comfortable, although we are looking at 14-mile-an-hour wind at kickoff. When it comes to the total, the Bears did see 3 out of their last 4 outings get over the number. Meanwhile, Miami saw overs against the likes of the Lions, Jets, and Ravens. I'm going to lean toward the Dolphins minus 4 over 43. Next ballgame, little AFC action. I'm talking about AFC East action. I'm talking about Buffalo at the New York Jets, 1 o'clock East. Buffalo's minus 12 on the road, totals 47.5. Now, I do hate this number being a divisional road game and all that, but I do think the Bills can cover this number. It really looks like the Bills are unstoppable right now. They're leading the league in passing and total yards. Josh Allen's thrown 19 touchdown passes, and he ranks second in the league in QBR. Meanwhile, wideout Stephon Diggs, he's averaging well over 100 yards a game receiving, and he scored 7 times. But it's not just offense in Buffalo. These guys are allowing fewer points a game on defense than any other team in the league. They're facing a New York squad who struggles a bit running the football. Meanwhile, starting quarterback Zach Wilson, he's completing only 54% of his passes, and he's thrown 5 interceptions in 5 starts. Of course, that's compared to only 3 touchdown passes all year long. Now, injury-wise, Davis and Johnson are questionable for the Jets. Meanwhile, for Buffalo, Poyer and Brown are questionable for them. When it comes to the weather, 73 and mostly sunny at MetLife. When it comes to the total, the Jets saw their last 3 straight stay under the total. Meanwhile, Buffalo saw all of their games this year stay under the total except for one. I'm going to lean toward the Buffalo Bills minus 12 and the under 47.5 in the tight window. Next ball game, it is going to be Chargers at the Falcons, 1 o'clock Eastern kickoff. The LA Chargers are minus 3 on the road, totals 49. Now, the Chargers did get the W in 3 out of their last 4. They're doing a fantastic job of throwing the football. Justin Herbert's throwing for nearly 300 yards a game. Now, they're facing an Atlanta team on the other side of things who actually allows more passing yards a game than any other team in the NFL. Dead last in passing defense. They're actually allowing 307 yards a game through the air, along with 26 points per contest. Now, that's an amazing feat considering they're in the NFC South. I mean, you got teams like Carolina who don't throw well. You got, Tampa Bay who hasn't been, great this year either. Now, when it comes to covering the number, the Falcons failed to cover in their last 2 straight. When it comes to the injury report, Terrell and Hawkins are questionable for Atlanta. Meanwhile, for the Chargers, Allen, Parham, Palmer, and Hopkins, they're listed as questionable for them. And when it comes to the total, LA went 4-1 to the over in their last 5. Meanwhile, the Falcons saw 5 out of their last 8 get over the total themselves. I'm going to lean toward the Chargers minus 3 over 49. Next matchup, it is going to be Panthers at the Bengals, 1 o'clock Eastern start time. Now, real quick, I was just mentioning that Atlanta gives up a lot of passing yards, and they're in the NFC South. They do, but I guess that's pretty expected. Tom Brady's still throwing for a lot of yards in Tampa Bay, and New Orleans is pushing the ball as well. They're actually in the top 10 in passing as well. So I guess it's only Carolina who doesn't throw well. So I guess it's expected for Atlanta to give up a whole bunch of passing yards. But regardless, that's not what you want to have going up against Justin Herbert. All right, next game, Panthers-Bengals, 1 o'clock East. Cincinnati's minus 7, totals 44. And even though the Bengals did lay an egg on Monday Night Football, they are the better team in the spot here. For one, Cincy covers a ton of point spreads. They're 5-1 ATS in their last 6. And number 2, Joe Burrow's been dynamic under center this year. He leads the NFL in total passing yards, and he's 3rd in touchdowns. Now, they're facing a Carolina team who's little threat throwing the football themselves. These guys are throwing for just $187 per contest. And equally as bad, the Panthers are scoring only 19 points a game. Now, injury-wise, Hubbard and Mosby are questionable for Carolina. Meanwhile, for the Bengals, Apple, Awuzie, Topu, Flowers, Williams, and Morgan, they're listed as questionable for them. When it comes to the weather report, slight chance of showers in the morning, but should clear up by kickoff. Should be 68 degrees by 1 o'clock with a slight breeze. When it comes to the total, since he saw their last 3 straight, all get over the number. Meanwhile, Carolina saw overs this year against the likes of Atlanta, San Francisco, and Cleveland. Give me Cincinnati minus 7 over 44. Next ball game, it is going to be Packers at the Lions, 1 o'clock Eastern start time. Green Bay is the 3-point favorite on the road, totals 50. And as bad as the Packers are right now, well, this Detroit defense has been awful. They're giving up more points a game than any other franchise in the league. And I told you guys at the beginning of the year, everybody loved Dan Campbell. Oh, he's great on Hard Knocks. This guy's a motivator. He's a leader. I said by week 10, if you don't have a winning record, that shit's going to get really exhausting. And I think we're at that point. I also said that about Jameis Winston doing all his goofy shit at the beginning of the year. Everybody thought it was great. Everybody loves Jameis. And I was basically like, well, by week 10, if the Saints don't have a winning record, that's going to get exhausting as well. So at least I'm somewhat right on one of those fronts, because if you got a coach like DC acting like an imbecile and you've got one win all year, well, that's not, talk don't cook the rice. I've said that before. A lot of guys agree with me. Talk don't cook the rice. But anyway, moving on. Talk don't cook the rice unless you're me. I talk for a living. But anyway, this Detroit defense, they've been terrible. They're giving up more points a game than any other team in the league. And they're also allowing more yards a game than any other team in the NFL as well. They're facing a Green Bay defense who's actually one of the better defensive units in the league. These guys are allowing just 174 yards a game through the air. They're actually in the top 3 in the league in that category I just mentioned. Now, Rashawn Gary's leading the pass rush with 6 sacks on the season. Meanwhile, Devondre Campbell has a team-best 64 tackles. Now, injury-wise, Lazard, Jenkins, and Watson are questionable. Meanwhile, for Detroit, Harris, Nelson, Melifonwu, Parker, Wright, and Lucas are questionable for them. When it comes to the total, 5 out of Detroit's last 7 did get over the number. Meanwhile, Green Bay saw overs against the likes of Washington, New York Giants, and New England, all over. Overs. Give me Green Bay -3 over 50. Next game, Raiders, Jaguars, 1 o'clock East. Vegas -2, total 48. And as bad as Jacksonville's been, the Raiders are just a 2-win team right now. Their defense is allowing 25 points a game, and they're in the bottom 10 in total yards allowed. Now they're facing a Jacksonville team who actually has had little issue moving the chains for the most part, believe it or not. They're actually in the top 10 in the league right now in total yards per contest, and they're gaining nearly 5.5 yards per play on the ground. Now, defensively, the Jags are giving up only 19 points a game. So these guys certainly giving themselves chances to win, although it's not showing up in the win column. Now, Foy, Aluakin, and Devin Lloyd, they have nearly 150 tackles between the two of them. When it comes to this injury report, Jacksonville is relatively healthy, for the exception of Jamal Agnew, who's battling a knee. Meanwhile, for Las Vegas, Waller, Bauer, and Turner, they're all questionable to play. When it comes to the weather, small chance of a shower in the morning, but should clear out by kickoff. Going to be a warm one. It'll actually be 80 degrees with 12-mile-an-hour winds when this one gets started. When it comes to the total, the Jags saw overs against Indiana, Philadelphia, and the Chargers. Meanwhile, Vegas went 4-1 to the over in their last 5. I'm going to lean toward the Jags +2 over 48. Next matchup, Seahawks, Cardinals, 4:05 East. Arizona's the 1.5-point favorite at home. Totals 51. Now, the Cards did drop 3 out of their last 4, and they're allowing more points per game than most clubs in the league. They're allowing over 26 points per contest, which puts them in the bottom 3 in points allowed. They're also having a tough time slowing down the pass. Now, they're facing a red-hot Seattle squad on the other side who won 4 out of their last 5. And they score a whole bunch of points. Matter of fact, these guys are in the top 5 in the league right now in points per game. Geno Smith is completing 73% of his passes. And he ranks 4th in the league in QBR. Now, injury-wise, Ballore, Blythe, Hart, and Taylor are questionable for Seattle. Meanwhile, for Arizona on the other side, Hudson, Humphreys, Connor, and Gardick, they're listed as questionable for them. When it comes to the scoring, Arizona saw their last 2 straight get over the total. Overs against the likes of Minnesota and New Orleans. Meanwhile, 4 out of Seattle's last 6 got over the total themselves. I'm going to lean toward the Seahawks +1.5 over 51. Next contest, it is going to be Rams at the Bucs, 4:25 East. Tampa Bay is -3 at home. Totals 42. Now, the Bucs should be able to shut down Los Angeles here. Tampa Bay's still playing some really good defense this year despite their record. They're allowing only 18 points a game, and they're in the top 10 in pass defense. Devin White and Levante David, they're both leading the charge with 123 tackles combined. Meanwhile, offensively, Tom Brady's still second in the league in passing yards. Now, they're facing a Rams team on the other side of things who's done very little offensively this year. LA scoring just 16 points a game, and they actually rank in the bottom 3 in the league in total yards. Now, weather-wise, should be a beautiful day down there in South Florida. Mostly sunny and very hot on Sunday. It'll be 85 degrees and slightly breezy by kickoff. Now, injury-wise, Hicks, Bray, Davis, Gage, Murphy, Bunting, and Whitfield, they're all listed as questionable for the Bucs. Meanwhile, for LA, Kupp, Akers, and Hopkins, they're listed as questionable for them. When it comes to the total, plenty of unders to go around between these two squads. The Rams actually saw 5 out of their last 7 stay under the posted total. Meanwhile, Tampa Bay 6-2 to the under on the year themselves. Good for 75% in that category. Give me Tampa Bay -3, under 42. All right, next ball game, we're going to move into some Sunday night football. I'm talking about the Titans at the Chiefs, 8:20 p.m. East. Kansas City's the 12.5-point favorite at home. Totals 46. And even though the Chiefs should stomp these guys, I actually don't think their D is playing good enough to lay double digits. The Chiefs are allowing 25 points per contest, and they're in the bottom 10 in total yards allowed. They're also facing a Tennessee squad on the other side of things who loves to run the football. Derrick Henry's averaging over 100 yards a game, and he scored 7 times on the ground. And when it comes to covering the point spread, well, the Titans covered in 5 out of their last 5 straight. They covered their last 5 straight games. Now, injury-wise, Tannehill, Weaver, and Carter are questionable. Now, guys, Tannehill's on the injury report. He's banged up right now, but his injury is not affecting our pick because his backup's a runner, and we like Tennessee because of their rushing attack. Meanwhile, Kansas City on the other side, Fenton, Dana, and Tony, they're on their injury report. Now, weather-wise, clear skies and mild on Sunday night in Kansas City. Should be a clear 56-degree night with very little wind. When it comes to the total, KC saw 3 out of their last 4 get over the line. Meanwhile, Tennessee saw overs against the likes of the Raiders and the Bills. I'm going to lean toward Tennessee plus 12.5, keeping this one close, over 46. And with that, guys, we're going to jump into our next and final ball game for the video. It's going to be Monday Night Football. I'm talking about the Ravens at the Saints, 8:15 Monday night. Baltimore is the 3-point favorite on the road. Total's 48.5. And speaking of the total, Baltimore saw overs this year against the likes of the Buccaneers, Patriots, and Dolphins. Meanwhile, New Orleans went 4-1 to the over in their last 5. Now, real quick, let's take a look at the injury report here. Landry, Thomas, Lattimore, and Troutman, they're all listed as questionable for the Saints. Meanwhile, for Baltimore, Campbell, Bynes, Andrews, Edwards, and Cleveland, they're listed as questionable for them. When it comes to selecting a winner in this one, this game's being featured as my 3rd and final NFL tier package bet on my website. So if you want to see whether I like the Saints catching points at home, or if I like the Ravens getting the job done on the road here, there's only one way to find out, and that's to sign up for my NFL tier package bets on my website. And once again, guys, I'll include a link for that site in the description section below. But as far as making a free pick is concerned in this game, I'm going to go ahead and lean toward the over 48.5 points. And with that, guys, now it's time for our quick pick recap. Give me the over 43.5 in the Philly-Houston game. I like Washington plus 3.5 over 44. Give me Indianapolis plus 5 under 39. Let's try that again. Let's start that over. All right, guys, now it's time for our quick pick recap. I like the over 43.5 in the Philly-Houston game. Give me Washington plus 3.5 over 44. I like Indy plus 5 under 39. Miami minus 4 over 43. Buffalo minus 12 under 47.5. LA Chargers minus 3 over 49. Cincinnati minus 7 over 44. Green Bay -3 over 50. Jacksonville +2 over 48. Seattle +1.5 over 51. Tampa Bay -3 under 42. Tennessee +12.5 over 46. And before I give you my next and final free pick for the video, one final reminder that, guys, we are hitting at 66% in our last 30 NFL tier package bets on my website. I like the over 48.5 in the Ravens-Saints game.